Hello, friends. So today we are going to talk about research protocol, like how do you draft a research protocol, and the key points to be mindful of. So when it comes to research protocol, you always ensure that you keep improvising it, and that's where the importance of version, number, and date is. You start with the first version and then you keep developing it, and whilst you develop it, you make sure that you update the versions here. And it's always important to not delete the previous versions, leave it. Maybe there may be the case where you may have to revisit the previous ones and then include it in your latest version. So when it comes to the research protocol, obviously the proposed title of the study, the name of the applicant, which is the principal investigator, then the field supervisor or the clinical supervisor, the on where you will conduct this research there, and then the academic supervisor. So say if you're doing your MD research or PhD, then it's important that you have an academic supervisor there. You give an introduction which sets the tone, so a bit of a background of why you want to do this study, what has already been done. So again, it comes to with the how good your literature search was. So you've done a good critical review of the existing evidence, and what makes you think that your study is going to enhance that existing knowledge, and where are those potential gaps which needs to be filled. So that would all be captured in the introduction. Then based on your introduction, based on your literature search and review, then you postulate the aims and the objectives, and what is your research question or hypothesis. So what is the aim of this study? What is it that you're trying to achieve, and what is your proposed hypothesis? The key is, please ensure that it is as simple as possible. And that is where the role of various versions of your research protocol is, because you may have n number of ideas, and you want to capture everything in one research study, but sometimes it is not feasible enough, it is not practical enough to do that in one study. And that is where a good introduction is, so that if you're doing a thorough literature study on that, then the research question in your mind is clear. If the research question in your mind is clear, then it is very easy to draft or design the method of the study. So say if you're planning a randomized control trial, so generally, when you started, you would like to compare various things, where one group is this, the other group is that, and the third group is something else, and then the fourth group is placebo controlled, and then you're comparing. So again, if you're adding too many arms there in your study, it can become complicated. And that is where sometimes the hurdle is in getting ethical clearance or even funding approvals, where you've included too many arms, and then the budget increases, and then it becomes difficult for you to secure the funding required to conduct the study. That whilst you are drafting your research protocol, you keep it very simple and make sure that it is practically achievable. And one of the ways is that you make sure that you're not including too many groups in your trial, in your proposed trial, maybe 2 or maximum 3, but not more than that. If you're including more, then make sure that you're justifying it in a very simple terms, that when it goes to, say, the ethics or for funding, in that panel who is looking at your proposal, it's not only the expert in your field, but it is also seen by by a lay person who may be from general public, who may not be an expert in this, but their value really matters. Keep it simple so that everybody on that panel is able to understand. Now, when it comes to method, calculate the sample size, and that's where again the importance of literature search and literature review is. So the sample size used already, through which you can calculate the sample size for your proposed study. In participants, to include the inclusion and the exclusion criteria, design, what kind of design, whether it is a randomized control trial or a cross-sectional study, whatever. So materials, so it's important to include what exactly you're going to use. Are you going to use questionnaires? Are you going to use medications, placebo? It also includes consent form, participant information sheet. I will do a separate video on participant information sheet, where it's important that you capture all the information of your study in a very simple way. Then procedure, how are you going to conduct this study? How are you going to recruit participants? How are you going to do the initial assessment, and what is it that you're assessing? How are you going to monitor? How long is the study for? How often, depending on the duration of the study, how often are you going to review the participant, and how are you collecting data and all that? Everything is included in procedure. And then the proposed analysis. How are you going to potentially analyze this, the data you have collected? So all that has to be included in here. So whether in your proposed analysis, are you going to use SPSS software? Then the costs. Again, these are all the practicalities. So that is something you need to include, in your research proposal. Where are you going to do? So that comes under location. And then what are the ethical implications to this? So how are you going to ensure that you're maintaining patient confidentiality? And that is where the participant information sheet is very important, that you're capturing every information possible. Any potential risks, any potential distress or complaints. So when you are drafting that participant information sheet, and if any participants have got any issues or would like or have any complaints, then there is a contact information who they can contact, and that has to be mentioned in the participant information sheet. So that should be included. Again, approval from professionals. So again, it's the ethics approval. And then so usually what happens is, when you're collaborating, you need approval letters from the place where or the site where you're going to do the study, whether it is a university, whether it is the hospital or any other place. So you need approval from them. They may be separate, they may have their own research and developmental departments, R&D, which is what it is called. So these are R&D teams, you need approval from them. If you're using particular medications, approval from the company you're going to get those from. So all these approvals are required. And then potential benefit of this research. What is it that you're trying to achieve? How useful it is in terms of evidence-based medicine and for people in general. So that is something which needs to be included. And then once you've completed this research, how are you going to disseminate it? How are you going to share it? So how is it that you're going to do? Well, you're going to share it through publication, through online social media platforms, or whether it is through conducting seminars or presentations or whatever. So that is something which needs to be included in here. Then the time scale, you can capture this in the form of charts, which again I will talk about in my future videos. So that starts from recruitment of participants, beginning of the research, monitoring, data collection, data analysis, and all that. So there has to be steps of doing your study, and the timeline is important. And it's also equally important to stick to the timeline as well. Obviously, there would be some room, which is understandable. In research, there could be delays with the approval or recruitment, but it has to be practically achievable. There is always a flexibility of 6 months or so, but nothing more than that. So obviously, make sure that you're sticking to your time scale. Add additional documents. So that could include, the consent form, the participant information sheet, the participant or patient demographic information sheet, where you're including details of the patient and of the participant, and then and then what is it that you're measuring, and all that needs to be included, and the assessment forms you're using. So all these things need to be captured. Again, these are all very, say, especially the patient demographic information sheet and the assessment forms and all, they are very confidential. So you need to ensure that you're mentioning in your in the confidentiality, that how are you going to store the data you get, whether it is secure enough, who has access to this, how are you going to ensure that it is safe and secure, and there is no room of breach in confidentiality. When you think of the patient demographic information sheet, there would be a lot of things. You're asking about the personal details. Maybe you're also including some physical health history, or any medical history. This is all included in here. And then in assessment forms as well, it would be more in detail. And so again, these are all very confidential information. But then when you're preparing your research protocol, you need to include all these forms in your research protocol. And then obviously, whatever literature search you've done, that you need to include the references you've used to get your information from. This was a brief overview on how to draft a research protocol. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you again in future videos. Thank you very much for your time. Take care. Bye bye.